Alright, it's been a while since I've made a video, or at least a normal video for my channel. But I wanted to do a little experiment this winter here. So last winter, for my pond here, I turned the pump off, which is down inside there. That's the intake bay. It's in a 5-gallon bucket underground. I think it's probably about 18 inches deep or so from the surface, or a little more than that. So I'm never really worried about the pump actually being frozen solid, even if I turned it off. Even last year, the ice layer that formed on the top surface of the pond, even in the coldest temperatures of near 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and then single digits for like a week, it only got to be about 3 inches thick, and that's with no water movement at all, except for an aerator on the side. So this year, what I want to do, and let me explain why I want to do it first. So in the pond here, the intake bay sucks the water in here, pumps it up through a tube which goes around up to the bog area, and the bog area is simply just a natural filter, and it comes up underneath the ground over in this area 2 feet down, and comes up and percolates up through the gravel that's filled with, and then flows through that, and all the roots and everything with the plants and everything are going in there. So it's a mechanical and a biological filter. And then there's a little bit of a spurting action going on out there that is spurting water. Just a little bit of the water that's going underneath the bog area is coming out on top to act as an air purge. So if the pump shuts off, it won't siphon the water out of the bottom of the bog and go back into the pond. It's an air break. So there's a little bit of trickle up there, and there's a little bit of ice forming. You can see it. There's a plant there growing over there, and there's ice forming all around from the splashing. Just kind of showing you how cold it is. Right now it's been below freezing for a few days now. We're in the mid-20s Fahrenheit. Right down the middle here, there's a little bit of a stream. This whole area up here is all water, but I have plants growing in it. So there's a little stream that I keep clear in the middle there. So the water flows out this way so that it doesn't build up and flow over the liner edge. So I kind of keep that clear of leaves and everything. And that's watercress growing in there. And then down here, that stuff actually loves cold weather. It's actually still growing even though it's below freezing, and that water temperature is very cold. I don't know what the water temperature is right now. I just had my hands in it before with some gloves on, and it's very, very cold. It's probably very close to freezing. Anyways, getting back to why I wanted to do this was because last winter when I shut the pump off, there was no water up here. This was all dry. So basically what happens is, in the biological filter, that it takes a while for the bacteria levels to build up, that it attaches to the surface of the gravel and everything, which does the filtering for the water system. To keep it ecologically balanced. So when you turn it off and you take the flow away, well, now all the aerobic bacteria dies off, and then you have anaerobic bacteria that takes its place. And then when I turn the pump on in the following spring, again, the water that came out of here, it stunk really bad. That's not good for the pond. So what I want to try to do this year is I want to just leave the pump running all winter. And we'll see how it affects the water flow up here, and then we'll see if the pond even freezes over. So I think as long as the water is flowing, going underground and come back up and everything, I don't think the whole thing will freeze. I think we'll maintain some amount here that won't be a frozen surface. My only concern is that up here is that if, like, say up in that area up there, if that ice is over too much, it could cause a backup of the water, and that can cause it to overflow over the liner, which is something I'd have to address at a much later time, probably next spring or summer. That would require basically removing all the rocks up here and redoing the liner to have a much higher edge. Not something I want to get into at this point, obviously. But this is a little experiment. We're just going to see what happens. I'll have to keep my eye on it to make sure that nothing starts overflowing or freezing completely. The water is moving pretty quickly up there, so I really don't think that part's going to freeze in the middle. If anything, it might ice over on the surface, and it'll maintain a flow underneath it. Beyond that, I think everything should be okay, but I will update this video throughout the winter here, and we'll see what happens. Alright, it's the next morning here since the first segment of the video, and it got down to just below 20 degrees Fahrenheit last night, and the surface of the water actually froze over. This is the first time of this year, we're in December now, that it's actually froze over on the surface. But it's actually already starting to melt. So where the water is coming over the waterfall, the water is flowing this way, and then this is melting a little bit over there. And then, of course, the aerator's over there. That was never frozen over. The one thing I'm a little bit concerned about is that if this gets frozen enough right in here, is if the water will not be able to pass through the rocks there to get down into the pump, then it could possibly run the pump dry. There is obviously some water freezing, making ice over here by the waterfall. I don't expect that to ever really be much of a problem. It's mainly up here where I would be worried about. So if that middle part freezes where it's flowing, that could cause a backup and cause it to overflow over the edges up here. But other than that, that's the first time it's froze over. And mainly I'll be watching this part over here. This would be the most important part. If this all freezes in front of there and makes an ice dam, that could be the worst case scenario. So I'm up here in the bog area. You can see the channel I have that goes between the watercress. This is actually mostly floating on top. It's not really all the way down, but I clear a channel out in the middle to make sure I get good flow. As I've said, most of the water actually comes up from underneath here, and then some of it, about 10% of it, comes out here at my siphon break. And you can see it's actually formed this little ice bubble all the way over here, so it's coming out, and you can still see the water flowing underneath that. It's kind of weird how it did that. Alright, so it's another day here, about a day later actually, and it's been right around 22 degrees over the past 24 hours, and we're going through a little minor lake effect snowstorm here. And I've been keeping an eye on the pond here, and you can see the water is still flowing. And there's a little bit of an area here where it's where no ice is forming. That's where the outflow is from the little waterfall there. And oddly enough, the aerators are not working. I think I know exactly why. I'll talk about that in 1 second here. Over here where the intake bay is, it's not frozen there, which is a good sign, because the water, which is warmer, which is flowing into here, which is keeping that from freezing. And it appears I haven't lost a whole lot of water to either evaporation or a spillover from the bog area. So the aerators are off, and I believe, well, I can't tell or not for sure. Normally there wouldn't be any ice forming if the aerators were working. So the air is coming from inside the house, pumping air through here, and I believe condensation has built up in the lines, probably somewhere along in here, and it's froze. So that's what I figured would happen. Actually, I was kind of expecting it. So I'll have to work on fixing that somehow. You would think pumping warm air through there from inside the house would stop it from freezing, but it's not pumping it fast enough. There's not enough volume of air to keep it from freezing. So when the condensation forms in there, and it's 20 degrees outside, and it's not buried really deep, it's going to freeze. All right, it's the next morning, and the snowstorm is over, and it is currently 18 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's been hovering right around the same temperature all night. Still not frozen. Still got a waterfall going here. No ice buildup up there. Looks about the same as it did last night, and the water level is still about the same as it was, so I'm not losing water. And I also did confirm that the aerators, the line going up under the ground here is blocked. There's no pressure that I can push through there, so it's not like the line is disconnected somewhere or broke. It's just blocked because warm air from inside the house, or I should say warm moist air from inside the house, is going through the line, hitting the inside the tube out here, which is causing it to condensate because it's cold, and then that condensation builds up and then it freezes. So I'm just gonna have to do what I did last year, which is basically just put the aerator outside and suck the cold air in instead of pumping warm air through there so it doesn't condensate. Worked fine all through last winter with no problem, even when it was even colder. So I'll just have to move the aerator outside. But other than that, everything else looks pretty good so far. Temperature's only going to go up from here over the next couple weeks. Okay, it is another morning here. It dropped down to 15 degrees Fahrenheit overnight, and it's going to be like that through the whole day. It's only going to get up to 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and then overnight again tomorrow. It's going to be the same. It's going to be about 15 degrees overnight, and then maybe get up to 25. But today is going to be about 20 to 30 mile an hour wind gusts all throughout the day. Same thing last night. Figured this might be a good test here. See kind of what happens. I did get my aerators working again. You can see the bubbles come out over there in the corner, and then some small amount of bubbles there. I had to wait till it got up to 50 degrees the other day. The lines under the ground here thawed out, and I was able to blow the lines out with the aerator. I just had to wait for it to melt. But once it did, I got it out, and then now they're working, and I put the aerator outside so that it doesn't suck in any warm air and cause condensation on the inside of the lines. It should work fine. I mean, I had the aerator outside all throughout last year with never any issues with it. So, but nothing is really frozen yet. The water is still flowing up top there, just the way that it was before, and there's obviously some ice forming, and it'll probably get worse as the day goes on and throughout tomorrow. Most of the top here has got a thin layer of ice on it. You can't really see it too well, but it's melted through here and still melted around here where the intake is. But mainly I'll just be watching this area to make sure this doesn't freeze over or freeze up and cause ice dam there. I mean, other than that, we'll just come back maybe in the next day from now and see what happens. It is now the next morning, and it is still 15 degrees, so we've been well over 24 hours now at 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Actually, I think yesterday it only went up to like 17 degrees Fahrenheit, which is barely any different. Everything is still flowing here, and you can see that you got a little spot there that looks like it's open, but it's not. It's just a really thin layer of ice right there, and that's just because of the outflow from that. So it's kind of flowing down and coming up and hitting the surface and keeping that spot from being too thick. The rest of it is all frozen. I don't know how thick it is. It's not too thick. Most of what's up here is fine. There's, as expected, around the edges and around some of these rocks here where they're acting like ice cubes, there's a little bit of freezing around them, but everything else is flowing perfectly fine, especially all the way up there. And then over here, the aerator, that's keeping a hole in the ice as expected. And that side over there is just, it's smaller because there's hardly any bubbles coming out of that one. Most of the bubbles are going to that one because they're in series. But still working because I moved as I said, moved the aerator outside. If I had it inside the house, these lines would have formed the condensation and frozen by now with how cold it is. And over here at the intake bay, everything's perfectly fine still. A little bit of ice freezing around the rocks there, but for the most part, everything is still flowing perfectly fine. Doesn't look like the ice is too thick. I mean, it might be at most a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch thick or so. Not too bad. So this is looking pretty good outlook for what's to come if it does get any worse this winter. We're still in the beginning of it. It's not technically even winter yet. We're still technically in fall. So got a long way to go, but I do like these small little tests here, just because, you know, these short, hard freezes for a short period of time, because it kind of gives me an idea of what's going to happen when we have longer freezes. So as of right now, I can tell there's not really any major problems going on. Major being if this was to completely block up with ice and not allow any water to flow through, and then we'd be in trouble here. Then this whole thing just wouldn't work. But in order for this all to freeze, where the water is flowing like here and up there, the whole mass of this water, meaning, you know, the entire mass all the way down to the bottom, would have to be below freezing temperatures, and the whole thing would have to basically freeze in order for this moving water to freeze. Or it would have to be just really cold, like in the negative temperatures for a long period of time to form like an ice dam here. But the water in this pond will never freeze all the way down to the bottom. Even if we had a really cold winter for the whole winter, and we had below freezing temperatures, it still would not freeze all the way to the bottom. At most, probably what would happen is that it would freeze thick enough to freeze all the way down to the bottom over here, which is only about I think 8 inches deep right here. That could possibly freeze if we had a winter like that, where it was really cold for really long periods of time. Typically, though, where I live in Ohio, it's not really like that in the winter. So we do have a lot of temperature swings where it goes above freezing during the winter on multiple occasions. That's just throughout history. But as of right now, tomorrow, midday, it's going to start to go above freezing. So it's still going to be 24 hours before it even goes above freezing from now. So it's going to be cold like this all day through today, through overnight, and then tomorrow in the early morning hours, meaning right around sunrise, it's going to go above 20 or so, and then it's going to hit above freezing, I think, after the afternoon. So we have a long way to go yet. And then after that, we're going to go up into the 40s and 50s. It's going to rain, and then we're going to probably swing back down into colder temperatures. Not quite as cold as this, but this gives me a really good idea of what's to come this winter. All right, it's another consecutive day at 15 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the next morning, and we got mostly flowing water over here, but you can see there is ice forming right around in that area, which it's not really an issue. It's just surface ice. You know, as long as there's flow underneath it, that's perfectly fine. Thinner over here because this is where the water's flowing out from the waterfall area, and the little part right over there where the aerator is, it's forming like a little ring around that. And then over here we got the waterfall. As you can see there, it's forming ice that's rising up. I suspect if we have freezing temperatures for longer periods of time, that might actually climb up. We might actually have like an ice cave underneath there. It might just stop at the top and then be like a big hollow area underneath. That's my guess. Alright, this is going to be the last segment of this video, which is part 1. I will be posting part 2 sometime around springtime, but this video is actually starting to get too long already. I'm actually recording from inside my house right now because it's not all that nice outside. It's snowing kind of on and off here. I don't want to talk over the waterfall noises, and it's pretty cold. So there's a couple things I wanted to cover, and I don't need to do that from outside. I will show you a couple things outside here in this video, but for this particular moment, I just want to talk about a couple things inside the house. It's much easier here. So over the past 2 weeks, I have not recorded anything. I forgot to record something that was kind of important, and we actually had above freezing temperatures going from mid-December to now, which is in early January. So we are officially now in winter. But we actually had above freezing temperatures. We actually had a lot of rain. There was no snow on the ground. It was melted long ago. And I had some issues, and one of the issues was up in the bog area up there, up top, there was still water overflowing. I was losing water, not fast, but over a period of days, I was losing inches of water in the pond area, which is bad because the intake bay, if that gets down to a certain point, the pump will run dry. So what was happening up there where I showed you before in the video was there was icicles forming on a plant that was hanging over the where the water was coming out. And this time, I didn't record it, but it got worse. And it didn't block anything up. Like, the water's still flowing out just fine, but the ice, I think, was damming up so bad behind it, which I couldn't see back there because it's like a little cavern almost. It was all backed up in there, and I think the water was overflowing off the back side of the liner on the top part there. So after I removed that ice up there, I just broke it all up and removed it all out. It seemed to be, the flow seemed to be increased. There was a little indicator up there where it was flowing over a rock, which it looked like it increased in flow. So I kind of figured it was losing water out the backside, since more water was then moving that way after I removed the ice. Also, I did remove a couple of rocks up there that was somewhat restricting the flow of water coming this way. And since I've done all of that, I haven't really lost any water since. The water level's been pretty consistent, except for natural evaporation, which is usually not more than a quarter inch a day. So that was taken care of. The next problem I ran into, which we did have freezing temperatures sometime in the past 2 weeks, I don't remember when, but right there where the intake bay is, where I was pointing out before, where I was worried about the ice damming up, it started doing that. And the ice, I don't particularly remember why it was doing that, but we might have had like near freezing temperatures for so long that the water temperature started to get lower, and then when it did get below freezing, the ice was able to build up thicker than it did before, because before earlier in the video the water temperature was still higher. So over here it was starting to dam up. So the water level in this pond area was higher than that of the intake bay, because the water was getting restricted flowing into it, and it was sucking the water out of the intake bay a little bit faster than it can flow in. It wasn't running dry, but it was getting very close. And I started breaking up the ice around there and started to improve it a little bit. Not a whole lot, but it was better. So what I decided to do is I had an aquarium heater, not a very big one, it was 150 watt, and I laid it, it's in there right now, I laid it right in front of those rocks. And I don't have it on yet, because right now the water is actually flowing in there just fine. I can see it from here. The water is not, it's not dammed up at all, not yet. But we are going to get colder temperatures coming very soon. It's already, I think, 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now. But it's going to get even colder. The lows are going to get down to the very low teens, and it's going to be like that for at least the next 2 weeks. There is no above freezing temperatures on the horizon, and it's going to be even colder than it is now for long periods of time. So I put the aquarium heater right there. I just laid it right in front of the rocks, and there's a power cord. It's protected, but there's a power cord coming over here and going in there. And today I'm going to turn that on, because I think it's a good time to do it before it actually causes an ice dam. Because I already know if it doesn't form an ice dam after this, I know it's working. But if it forms an ice dam and then I try to melt it after the fact, it's going to be a lot harder to do that, and I'm going to run into problems, because I don't want to start a problem and then try to fix it. It's better to prevent it. So anyways, everything up there, you can see the water's still flowing out. It's actually kind of funny. It looks like a canyon going through there. And I'll probably show you a little clip there in a bit here. But I did add a piece of shale to the waterfall, so it extends way out over. So it's like, before the water was just kind of flowing over the rocks, and now I got a piece of shale coming out, and then it's coming past it and then dropping down, and there's like a little section, a hollow section behind it now. You can't really see it too well from here. Let's see if I can zoom in. You can sort of see it there. And that was just put there kind of crudely, and I'll probably redo the waterfall next spring to drop the water level in the bog area up there, so I don't have to like try to fix the liner. Because if the water level is a little, even just a ½ inch lower on that waterfall, if I remove a rock, that'll solve the problems with any overflow in the bog area, which I haven't really discussed too much in this video. I did discuss a little bit, but anyways, that's what it looks like now. About a foot of snow in 24 hours, and we're only going to get more. It's not going to melt. It's only going to build up, which is not good. On a personal note, that's not good for me, because I work outside. I'm a technician, and the deeper the snow gets, it makes my job exponentially harder. The cold I can deal with. The snow, when the snow gets deep, it makes everything harder. Just winter in general makes everything harder about my job. It's when the snow gets deep, it starts to get worse, and it's not going to melt, and it's only going to build up even more. So this is not good. But as far as the pond goes, everything is looking fine. And when I make part 2 in this video, I'll kind of go over what happened with the intake bay and if that little aquarium heater worked. Typically, the 150 watt heater is not going to be enough, but I think the water volume and the small little spot that it's in should be enough to keep that from building up an ice dam. Even if I put a 300 watt heater in there, it's not going to change the water temperature. It's not going to be enough to affect the water temperature. Maybe 1 or 2 degrees at most, I would suspect. But anyways, I'm not going to do any more talking here. I'll just show you some stuff outside here in the next little clip, and then that'll be it. All right, I'm outside now. Here's what it looks like. And you can see over here that that's the aquarium heater. It's just laying right in front of the rocks there. This is the bigger opening right here, and most of the flow goes through there anyways, so I just kind of laid it in front of these rocks here, because then the gaps are more narrow. As long as I can keep this open, that included with this part here should be plenty of flow. That side over there doesn't really matter too much right there. One thing I did notice here is there's some kind of a critter there. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's dead or what. I mean, it almost looks like a grub, but It looks like it's holding on to the edge of that. I don't think it's dead. I think it's, I don't know. It doesn't look anything like a dragonfly larva. It doesn't have those legs on it. It looks more like a moth caterpillar, but I don't think those can survive underwater. Anyways, yeah, this whole area is fine so far. I'm gonna kick on that heater, and we'll see what that does. I'll be updating it through part 2, and then you'll see that in the spring when I post it, or maybe sooner. Aerators are working fine, as I've said before. Like I said, I moved the aerator to outside. It's over there on the wall in a box, and that's just sucking in cold air from the outside and pushing the cold air through the tube, so that it's the same temperature, so it doesn't form condensation within the tube, and it's working just fine. Earlier in the video, I said it was inside the house. The aerator pump was inside the house, sucking warm, moist air through the tube. And that was causing condensation because, I mean, think about how like a still works if you were making alcohol. It's the same concept. So it was a really bad idea to put it in the house. I knew that to begin with, but I figured I would just try it out, and of course I was proved myself right, I guess. Here's the waterfall as I was talking about before. I just put a piece of shale there, and then there's a rock sitting on top of it just to kind of hold it. So it kind of extends way out past the initial fall there, and it kind of falls over top of it. I kind of like it. It's just a temporary set, though. I'm gonna end up doing it more permanent in the spring. And then you can see this river that kind of goes up that way. I can't even walk up here anymore because the snow is too deep. I can't see what I can step on. There's certain rocks that I can't step on. So it's going to be hard to show anything up in here unless I walk around the side. But you can see there's a rock right in the middle there with a pile of snow on it. I think that's kind of funny. Walk over here, it's really deep. Yeah, you can't really see much of anything going on there. The snow is kind of like, it's almost forming a cave through here. If we get any more snow, that'll probably form a cave, and the water will just flow through it underneath it. From what I can tell, I don't see any ice up there, but it's really hard to tell. But anyways, I think that'll do it for this video here. Ice I don't think is too thick yet, but as I said, I'll be updating this, kind of showing what's going on as we progress through this cold cycle through January. So that's it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.